Hey there, lovely soul. Welcome back to Noah's Stories. Today's story is one of quiet strength, forgotten memories, and the kind of love that finds its way even through darkness. So grab your tea, settle in, and let's walk with Eva, because sometimes the most powerful journeys begin in silence. The town of Pine Hollow, Montana rested in quiet isolation, as if abandoned by time. The pines whispered in the breeze, and dirt roads stretched endlessly. This was where Eva Reynolds, a 22-year-old blind girl, had grown up in both darkness and silence. Eva had lost her sight as a child after a mysterious fever stole not only her vision, but also her earliest memories. All she had left was a silver necklace with two pendants, a sun and a moon, the only link to a past she couldn't recall. She was taken in by Nancy Blake at the age of 6, not out of love, but for the state's foster care stipend. When the money began to dry up, whatever tenderness had existed quickly faded. To Nancy, Eva became a burden, a living reminder of the opportunities she never had. The people of Pine Hollow pitied Eva, but their pity was hollow, their kindness distant, just like her life. One gray, rainy afternoon, Nancy returned home reeking of alcohol and humming with strange excitement. "There's a job in Chicago," she slurred. "A good man's offering $5,000 to take you. This is your ticket out of this godforsaken town." Eva's heart pounded. Despite the unease rising in her chest, a fragile hope flickered. Maybe her life was finally about to change. The trip to Chicago blurred into a mix of sounds. The rumble of a bus, chatter from strangers, the jingle of coins as Nancy counted her payment. They arrived at a towering glass building, so sleek and modern it made Eva feel even more out of place. The man waiting for them was Damian Cross, CEO of Crosstech, a powerful technology empire in the Midwest. "This is the girl?" Damian asked. Nancy nodded quickly, pocketing the cash before vanishing into the city's chaos, leaving Eva alone in the grand lobby, her white cane tapping nervously on the marble floor. Damian hadn't wanted this meeting. It was his grandmother, Lucille Cross, who demanded it. A stern woman in her late 70s, she believed in an ancient prophecy written in the family's leather-bound genealogy book. If Damian didn't marry the chosen one, the Cross legacy would crumble. Lucille was certain Eva was the one. Her birth date matches. The necklace is the sign, she insisted, without a shred of doubt. But Damian didn't believe in fate. His heart was rooted in the past with a girl named Summer, a childhood friend he had once promised to marry beneath the stars by the lake. Summer had vanished long ago, leaving behind only guilt and a vow unfulfilled. Still, under pressure from Lucille and the weight of duty, Damian agreed to marry Eva. The wedding was rushed, held in the chapel of the Cross estate. That night, Eva stood in a borrowed gown, repeating vows she barely understood, and entered a marriage built not on love, but on cold obligation. Though legally married to Eva, Damian showed little interest in her. Most days he buried himself in work at Crosstech, avoiding the presence of a wife he never chose. And every time he heard the tap of her cane in the hallways, memories of another girl, Summer, rose unbidden. Summer had been his childhood companion. They'd raced along the lakeshore, caught fireflies under summer skies. He had given her a necklace with a sun and a moon pendant, promising one day he'd marry her beneath the stars. But Summer vanished after a tragic accident, leaving Damian with a broken heart and the twin to the necklace Eva now wore. He had no idea Eva was Summer. Her memories were gone, and the necklace, long thought lost, hung quietly around her neck on the woman he tried so hard to ignore. At Crosstech, Bianca Torres, an ambitious project manager with sharp eyes and sharper instincts, noticed how Damian's voice softened at the mention of Summer. One night, she overheard him whispering to his assistant Miles, "She wears the same necklace, but she doesn't remember." Bianca smiled to herself. A plan began to take shape. One evening, passing the estate's library, she spotted Eva crouched to pick up the fallen necklace. Bianca quietly stepped in, lifting it before Eva noticed, her eyes narrowing on the familiar design. "This is it," she whispered. That night, she found Miles in a dim corner of the Crosstech building. "Tell me everything about Summer," she said. "I'll become her." Bit by bit, Bianca crafted her deception. She branded a small scar on her shoulder, mimicking the one Damien had described. She memorized every story, every promise, every shared memory, and when the moment was right, she walked into Damien's office, the stolen necklace dangling from her hand. Ever since Bianca entered the estate, Eva had felt herself slowly erased from Damien's world. He barely acknowledged her, just hurried footsteps and slammed doors. Bianca, in contrast, was everywhere. When no one else was around, she leaned in close and whispered venom. "You were bought, not loved," she sneered. "How pathetic to think he could ever care for someone like you." Nancy, Eva's foster mother, had been summoned back, this time under the guise of a house assistant, but she and Bianca worked together, breaking Eva piece by piece. One afternoon, after Eva accidentally spilled a bit of tea, Nancy locked her in a storage room for hours. She was given no food, no rest, no comfort. Eventually, Eva collapsed in the hallway, her body giving in to sheer exhaustion. She woke up in a hospital bed. The beeping of machines filled the room. A doctor entered gently. "Miss Reynolds, you're pregnant. About 7 weeks." Eva froze. Her heart pounded as memories crashed into her. The wedding night, cold and wordless. She pressed a trembling hand to her stomach. A child. From that moment, something growing inside her, fragile and unchosen, but hers. For the first time in her life, something truly belonged to her. Damien had lain beside her, detached, performing what was expected. No warmth, no love, just obligation. She remembered the weight of his silence, the stillness between them. Now, from that night, life had come. She didn't know how to feel. Fear? Joy? For the first time in her life, something belonged to her, truly hers, not borrowed, not forced, a life she could love. She told no one. She trusted no one. She returned to the mansion and kept it a secret. She didn't tell Damien. She didn't tell anyone. Inside her, the child became a faint light, a quiet promise that maybe love could start from within. But that light didn't have time to grow. Weeks later, at a private family dinner, Eva quietly stood to leave the table. As she stepped down the stairs, Bianca, with a cruel glint in her eye, subtly extended her foot. Eva stumbled. Her cane clattered. A scream rang out, and then silence. Blood soaked through her dress. When Damien arrived, it was already too late. Eva lay still, her eyes closed, lips pale. The doctor confirmed the child was gone. Bianca clung to Damien, crying crocodile tears. "I didn't do anything. She just fell. I tried to help. Really." Eva, her voice shaking, whispered, "She pushed me, Damien. I was pregnant." But he just stared at her blankly, then shook his head. "You're always stirring chaos," he said, his tone cold, but his eyes briefly flickered as if something inside him had cracked. Then he turned his back. Eva turned her face to the wall. The necklace was gone. The baby was gone. Trust, worth, her world, gone. But deep in that darkness, something inside her began to stir. Not hatred, not revenge. A quiet will to survive. Just when Eva thought she had drowned completely in darkness, fate, once again, opened an unexpected path. In San Francisco, Robert Hartley, founder of Hartley Dynamics, had never given up hope of finding the daughter he lost 20 years ago. Elena kidnapped at a crowded fair when she was only 2. For 2 decades, he spent millions searching, clinging to hope as it slowly faded. Then, a report from the nonprofit New Roots landed on his desk. A blind young woman named Eva Reynolds, once abandoned by a foster mother in Pine Hollow, shared the same birth date as Elena. But what froze Robert's breath was this. Eva had a crescent-shaped birthmark behind her left shoulder, exactly like the one his daughter was born with. He immediately sent a team to New York to quietly investigate. A few days later, as Eva slowly recovered from the trauma of losing her baby, a gentle knock came at her door. A woman named Lauren stood there, her voice calm and kind. "I'm from New Roots," she said. "We believe you may be Elena Hartley." Eva went still. She had no memory of her early childhood, no family, no evidence. But as Lauren spoke of a father who had never stopped searching, and of that very specific birthmark? Eva's body stiffened with silent shock. "I know you have no reason to trust us," Lauren continued, "but Mr. Hartley doesn't want anything from you. He only wants to meet you. If you're willing, he'd like to bring you to San Francisco for a DNA test, and more than anything, to hold his daughter again." Eva didn't answer right away, but after all she had lost, being sold, betrayed, losing her child, truth was the only thing left worth finding. Even if it shattered her all over again, she had to know who she truly was. The trip to San Francisco felt like a dream. For the first time in her life, Eva, now Elena, stepped into the first-class cabin of a private jet. But it wasn't luxury that overwhelmed her, it was warmth. When the plane touched down in San Francisco, Eva still couldn't believe it was real. She couldn't see, but she felt the sunlight warmer on her skin, heard the kindness in the voices guiding her, and, most of all, felt the trembling arms of Robert Hartley as he embraced her for the first time. The DNA results confirmed it. Eva was Elena Hartley, his long-lost daughter who'd been taken at the age of 2. "I don't remember anything," Eva whispered. "I'm not even sure I'm who you think I am." Robert only held her tighter. "You don't have to remember. I've searched for you for 20 years. Just holding you is enough." The next day, Robert brought her to a team of the world's top ophthalmologists. After thorough examination, they confirmed, with the right surgery, she could regain her sight. Eva hesitated, but then nodded. The operation took place a week later. When the bandages came off, light flooded her eyes for the first time in over 2 decades. Eva wept, not just from sight, but from the sense that she was becoming whole again. Little by little, her memories returned. At first, only sounds, laughter in summer, water splashing, then faces blurred by time, and finally a boy by the lake calling her Summer, a name that now echoed in her heart. Weeks passed. Once Eva, now Elena, was strong again, Robert made her an offer. Come back to New York. Run Hartley's branch there, not just for business, but to reclaim yourself. Elena agreed. At the grand signing event between Hartley Dynamics and Crosstech, where Damien was among the guests, Elena walked in as someone entirely new. No longer the blind girl sold into silence, but a woman with clear eyes, strong steps, and a quiet, unshakable grace. Bianca, standing beside Damien, froze. As Elena spoke on stage, a man staggered into the hall, bruised and breathless. It was Miles, Damien's former assistant. "She's lying," he shouted, pointing at Bianca. "She's not Summer. I helped her fake it all." The crowd erupted. "She stole Ava's story. She faked the scar. She swapped Lucille's medicine. She's the one who killed her." The room fell into a heavy silence. Damien was motionless, stunned. Bianca tried to steady her voice, forcing a smile. "You love me. I am Summer. I've always been her." But her trembling betrayed her words. Elena, no longer the fragile Eva of the past, stepped down from the stage and slowly walked toward them. She said nothing at first, stopping face to face with Bianca. Their eyes locked, one full of panic, the other burning with calm defiance. Elena raised her hand and reached for the silver necklace around Bianca's neck, the sun and moon pendants glinting under the lights like the echoes of a childhood promise. Without hesitation, she yanked it free. The chain snapped in her hand. Still holding Bianca's gaze, Elena said, her voice clear and cutting, "This belongs to me." A ripple of whispers swept through the room. Bianca stepped back, then turned to run, but security had already sealed the exits. In a last desperate cry, she screamed, "I did it for love! I deserve this!" But no one was listening anymore. Silence followed her as she was led away, the necklace resting in Elena's palm. The past finally returned to its rightful owner. Damien stood still, eyes fixed on Elena. He didn't look at Bianca. He didn't need to. All his focus was on the woman he once abandoned, once doubted, once broke. He stepped forward, slow, uncertain. "Eva," he breathed, then, correcting himself, voice cracking, "No, Summer." Elena met his eyes, her hand gripping the necklace now back where it belonged. There was no darkness left in her gaze, only the clarity of someone who had endured and emerged stronger. Damien pulled a crumpled letter from his pocket. "It's from Lucille," he said. "She knew. She always knew. She wrote, 'That girl is your redemption. Don't lose her the way you've lost everything else.'" His voice trembled. "I was blind, Summer, not in sight, but in heart. I left you to suffer. I let you lose our child. I made you live in silence in the shadows I created." He dropped to his knees, not as a CEO, but as a man who had lost his soul. "I'm not asking to be forgiven. I'm asking for a chance to be worthy of it." Elena looked down at him, the man who once brought her to ruin, now kneeling in pieces before her. She remembered it all: the cold wedding night, the unspoken wounds, the child she never held. But through the cracks of memory, she also saw the boy by the lake, the smile of Jackie, the warmth of the hand that once promised her forever. "You made me lose everything," she said, her voice steady. "But because of that, I found myself again." Then she reached out her hand and pulled him to his feet. "I'm not ready to be your wife, but I'm not walking away either. We'll start again, from the beginning, step by step." Damien held her hand like it was the only thing anchoring him to the earth, tears quietly falling. "Just having you here is everything." 1 month later, in the garden of the Hartley estate on the outskirts of San Francisco, sunlight filtered softly through the willow trees and birdsong echoed gently, ushering in a new season. The tension was gone. The shadows of the past had lifted. What remained was peace. Elena sat still on a wooden bench, her eyes closed, listening to the sound of life. Birds, trickling water, leaves rustling. For the first time in a very long time, she didn't hear anything inside her mind. No whispers from the past, no shadows clinging to her. Only a quiet, peaceful silence. Around her neck, the silver necklace swayed gently in the sun. Sun and moon reunited, no longer lost. Damien approached, a small notebook in hand. He sat beside her without disturbing the moment and said quietly, "You've rewritten everything just by being here." Elena opened her eyes and looked at him. There was no anger left, no doubt, only recognition. Of herself, of the man who had once shattered her, and of the reason she had chosen to stay. "I don't need a fairy tale ending," she said. "I just need a real one. A place to begin, not to forget, but to move forward." From a distance, Robert Hartley watched them in silence. His eyes reflected a pride that words couldn't hold. He had found his daughter again, but more importantly, she had found herself. The sun began to set. The sky turned golden orange, like a curtain closing on an old chapter. Damien reached out and took Elena's hand. Not tightly, but gently, just enough to say, "I'm still here." And Elena, after all the pain and the loss, for the first time did not fear holding someone's hand again. She smiled, not because everything was healed, but because the storm had passed, and she had survived. She had walked through fire, and now she stood, stronger, steadier, and never alone again. The journey didn't end here. It was only just beginning. And just like that, her story begins again. Not with fairy tales, but with truth, healing, and quiet strength. Thanks for being here, lovely soul. If this touched you, don't forget to like, share, or simply leave a thought below. Until next time, stay brave, stay kind.